Hey guys, I'm Jen, and I'm just really not good at Mario Kart at all. I've been working a lot more on my new book idea. So today we're going to talk about a newsletter article that I read a couple of months ago called 10 Steps to Writing Your Novel in 2020, which I've been using as a guide and have found incredibly helpful. The first step is to set an intention, which includes when, where, and for how long you will write. It doesn't look like things are going to change anytime soon or become any more regular. So that means that my intention, instead of being a daily thing, is going to turn into something that's weekly. And right now, I think that expecting myself to work on my novel for about 3 hours a week is reasonable. 5 would be great, but 3 seems more doable. So for now, I'm going to go for that. I know that I have been working on it before I go to bed. Sometimes, if by a miracle both kids are asleep for a decent chunk of time during the day, and then on the weekends, which are my official work days. So 3 hours spread out over those opportunities throughout the week is definitely something that I can piece together. I fully expect to make it through this goal in 15-minute or half-hour chunks here and there, and then on the weekends, if I don't have any other pressing tasks to do before diving into the novel, then I know that I'll be able to sort of fill in either an hour here or 2 hours there with breaks in between. That's why I can do more than an hour, maybe up to 5, but 3 is a pretty good average for that time frame. So I'm giving myself a stretch goal and something that I definitely want to hit every week. But I don't really want to give myself a minimum because I think then I'll cut myself too much slack. I know myself better than that. And I also definitely want to make measurable progress rather than just sort of fitting this in wherever I find a couple of minutes. As for where I'll actually get all this writing done, best case scenario, here at my desk in my office. The only times I really have access to this space, however, right now, is on the weekends. So I take the time that I can, either in my bed before bedtime or on the couch in the living room sometimes. That's sort of a worst case scenario, but if I put on my noise canceling headphones, it's still a pretty good solution, and at least I'll get something done, again, in those 15-minute or half-hour chunks, rather than no work at all. The second step is to find an accountability partner. My first instinct was to ask my friend Lee, who I talk to about every week anyway. So I asked him today, and he said he was more than happy to be one of my accountability partners because he knows that we don't get in touch every week perfectly, and he also wants to make sure that I'm talking to other people, which means it was the right move to ask him to be an accountability partner. He knows his limits, he knows mine, and he's going to be a great person to bounce ideas off of. My other accountability partner is my husband because he's really good about getting on my case when I'm avoiding writing in favor of cleaning or doing laundry or cleaning or sitting around and doing nothing. Step 3 is to write a premise, which is a 1-sentence description of what your book is about. So you start with who your protagonist is, what their goal is, what's stopping them from achieving their goal, and then what will happen when they reach it. Sounds pretty simple, but it actually took some time. So I sat down and worked on this to really hammer out a polished premise this weekend, because while I've been working on world building, character development, looking up pictures of what I want the setting to look like, I have never been super focused on plot, which means that the premise for me usually stops with, what if a demon and a human got married? Great. What if? Now I, the author, have to figure out what if. So the premise helped me push through that thought process and sort of figure out where I wanted it all to end and what obstacles specifically I wanted the characters to come up against before they reached that ending. Step 4 is where things get scary, because now you have to share this premise with people and get feedback. The newsletter article recommends that you share it with 3 people. So I started sharing it with one of my sisters, Then I shared it with Jeremy. Then I shared it with a few friends who I trust with early drafts of my writing and who have all different opinions and different reading habits. Some of the things I had to remind myself of before getting this feedback was that questions I received were not criticism. They actually showed curiosity for the most part. And again, that my friends have different reading habits. A lot of the questions also gave me an opportunity to think more deeply about my premise and to consider whether or not it was actually the direction I wanted to go in. And by the end of getting all the feedback, I felt better about it rather than worse. The final reminder that I gave myself was that this premise is just that. It's the initial idea about the book. I do not need to have all of the answers yet, but I did write a lot of the questions down so that I can continue to consider them as I develop the plot and the characters. Step 5 on the list is taking some time. I'm still working on it because step 5 is to read your competition, which means that you have to determine who your competition is. What genre is your book going to be, and where would it be found in a bookstore or on Amazon or on a shelf at the library? In order to do that, you really got to think about the themes and the overarching plot of your story. While some of the inspiration for and research behind this book is going to be nonfiction like Edith Hamilton's mythology and the story of Hercules through the years, as well as YA fiction like Percy Jackson, things like Beetlejuice the Musical, and Disney's Hercules, none of that's really going to be on the shelf next to this book. So I did a little hunting and tried to figure out whether it would be supernatural or paranormal romance. And guess what? I'm still not 100% sure. I did some research on the difference between supernatural and paranormal as it relates to book marketing. What I found out was that paranormal is related to elements that could eventually be explained by science, but largely come from fairy tales and myth, whereas supernatural relates to things that will likely never be explained by science, and mostly have to do with God, the afterlife, and souls. A lot of sources explained it as supernatural being Frankenstein, and paranormal being Dracula, which feels wrong, because of all the science in Frankenstein and complete lack of science in Dracula. But that's what we've got. All I know is my book has demons in it and romance. Even though there may be some supernatural elements to it, the main thrust of the plot is the romance. So mine is probably going to be in the romance section. The next step is where I'm at the moment, which is creating an outline. The newsletter recommends that you write down a list of everything that you need to happen in your book, and then kind of organize it from start to finish, which I have begun doing. This is a list of all the things I want to happen in my book. I've started breaking it down, describing scenes rather than just things like locked room, introduce Meg, underworld, ? And I'm going to organize that eventually by pulling out sticky notes, putting them on the wall, and then moving them around. But for now, that's the step that I'm on. I am creating an outline based on the world and characters that I've already started developing. This is a really great step for me because I'm what NaNoWriMo people typically call a pantser, which means that you come up with sort of its spark for your book and then go from there, which leads to things like a zombie prom in the middle of a YA book that has nothing to do with zombie proms. I want to make sure that this book stays more focused, that it has an actual arc from beginning to end, and I'm going to be working on it for way more than 30 days, which means I'm under no time crunch to start writing the actual book. So the outline, I'm hoping to get done in the next couple of weeks and understand where this book is going from beginning to end, what my characters' journeys will look like. The outline also leaves room for exploration, adventure, finding things that I didn't know were going to be in the book, but certainly not huge discoveries. In other words, an outline will keep me focused from beginning to end without taking me on crazy side adventures that totally derail the whole point of writing the book from the get-go. Step 7 is to get started and write your first chapter. This is a great step because it sets the tone for the rest of the book, it gives you an idea of where you want to go, and it starts developing the voice that you're going to use. I have not done this yet. I have, however, written pieces of the book while character developing and writing about the setting in my Preptober workbook, which I know it's not October, but that's what I'm doing. And those things will fit other places in the book, but creating that first chapter is what's going to hook agents. It's what's going to hook your readers eventually. So writing that first chapter and getting it out early, giving it a lot of time to percolate in your brain and then get edited later on is a really great idea to do this early in the process. You should remember that you can delete that chapter that you write eventually and rewrite it, but getting something on the paper and knowing where you're going early on in the process is a really important step. Step 8 is to build your author website, which I have added to my to-do list. It's been on my to-do list for a while. I have now added it, bumped it up a few points to make sure that I actually have a place to gather everything other than my writer folio page, which is a wonderful place to keep links to all of the writing I've done in the past. But I really want one cohesive place to represent myself as an author and to make sure that agents and future readers can find out who I am, where my books are available, and all of that will be on the website. Something that you can do and that I've already started doing is looking up authors that you already know and admire and finding out what it is about their websites that you like or don't like. Keep a list in a notebook somewhere, keep track of the ideas that you want to use on your own website and ideas that you want to avoid. And then if you have the money, hire someone to work with you. Otherwise, do some research, poke around, use a website like Wix or WordPress. Step 9 is to publish something small. Take one chapter of your book, take an introduction to a character, or take a short story that takes place in that same universe. Put it online on Medium or on a Patreon community that you're a part of. Share it with your friends on Facebook or in a Discord server. Put it somewhere out to the public so that other people can read it and ask for feedback. Putting it out into the world is a scary first step, and asking for feedback is an even scarier second step, but it's something that eventually this book is going to be in front of people. So you've got to get used to it. Step 10 is pretty simple. Don't quit. If you get through a week where you don't hit your writing goals, where you don't read any of your competition, where you don't even think about creating an author's website, that's fine. There's always next week. And especially with what's going on right now, there's no way of telling exactly where your brain will be any given day, week, or month. So cut yourself some slack. There's a whole year ahead of you, and there's a lot more time after that too. Advice Jen can dish out, but she can't take. Remember that when people are giving you feedback, asking you questions, probing you for more information, it doesn't mean that they hate you or your book idea. It just means they're interested and they want more information. And if you don't have that answer, I don't know is a fine answer to give them. You don't need to get defensive, you don't need to shut down, and you certainly don't need to light them on fire. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe, and hit that bell to get notified every time there's a new video. Obviously, you can find me here and on any of my social media links, which you can find down in the description. Are you writing a book this year? Tell me about it in the comments. I would love to hear your premise or your character ideas or your setting design. As always, thanks for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you next time.
Is this articulate?
Hercules, my